Hello, I'm back with your League 5 Day 7 reveal, and today's reveal is a very tough decision between Last Recall and Banker's Note. First, I'm going to start by showing off a little video they put out, a quick 50-second video here. So Banker's Note seems to work about the same as it did last season. There might be some changes, but it seems to be pretty similar, and I took Banker's Note last season, and it was just great to have. Total Recall, unfortunately, is no longer given to everybody, Last Recall, and it also appears to be slightly nerfed. The special attack energy, hit points, and prayer are remembered from when you teleport it out. So if you go and heal, I think that means I think that means you'll come back in. So if you're doing like God Wars and you come back in, you're gonna lose whatever prayer and hit points you had when you left. You're gonna have to just start eating and healing right away. So that sounds a little nerfed to me because that was one of the major uses of Last Recall, was for God Wars, just because you could just go right back in right away and you didn't have to get kill count or anything, and it's kind of annoying to run to. Obviously, there's other uses for it, plenty of other uses for it, like room crafting, running to the bank, but you can do that with Banker's Note too. Um, there's tons of skilling and quests and other boss uses for Last Recall. It was a great relic to have for everybody last season, but now we're going to have to choose between the two, which is probably going to be one of the hardest decisions of League. Uh, Starting with Banker's Note, I'm going to cover what it says here. It says this item will allow you to note and unnote items anywhere in Gilnor. You'll have a little Banker's Note, like a little item in your inventory that you can use your item on to either note it or unnote it. And the activate option allows you to note and non-note items in one action with a specified quantity. An item must be used on or the object must be used on the Banker's Note in order for that to work. So you don't have to take out like 10. You don't have to take out like a full inventory of sharks, for instance. If it sounds the same as last leagues, if you want to do like one at a time and just click it really quick. For instance, last leagues I went to Tomes and I took I brought in a bunch of Karamwan and Prey Pots in noted form, and I could just unnote them one at a time. So I could just click the Banker's Note and click the item, and it wouldn't fill my inventory with Prey Pots, so I wasn't stuck with no food. I just had to click it a couple times quickly, so I could have like one Prey Pot and 5 food really quickly. It's a way to prevent like filling an inventory with Prey Pots and not having food to heal. So it's a very useful skill for or it's a very useful item for raids in particular, I would say, because it negates the need for as much like prep, and you can go a lot earlier because you can just bring in infinite food, so you can heal through everything. It also is really useful for skilling, and it kind of uh might change your opinion on some of the first relics, because now if you say wanted to get 99 woodcutting, but you don't want to take the woodcutting axe because even though it's overpowered for woodcutting, because you can bank everything, now you can just note everything, all your logs, so you don't have to worry about ever banking while you're woodcutting or fishing or mining. So that is a very helpful skilling tool as well. Um, that's really all there is to say about Banker's Note. I think it's a very, very powerful relic. Uh, I want to talk about Last Recall a little bit here too. It is called Total Recall this season. I want to read about it really quick here because there is some slight changes to the normal Last Recall. So it says this item can be used to store any single coordinate alongside your hit points, prayer, and special attack energy, and teleport back to it at a later date, restoring your stats to what they were. And it's good and bad because that like I would call it maybe a nerf, but they showed off like Zulrah. They saved the Zulrah location and their stats before they went into Zulrah. They killed Zulrah and then they used it and teleported back out, and then they were full healed and full prey. So it does work both ways. It actually can be useful. You could probably do the same thing with God Wars, where you go in, kill the boss, teleport back out with your stats fully restored, and probably fully potted because it saves your stats. So if you potted beforehand too, you only need one sip of a pot, And if you're killing the boss quick enough, like a God Wars boss, for instance, you could just kill it, teleport outside, go back in, and have your stats fully restored to what they were as you walked into the room. It might actually be better than what I was originally giving it credit for. At first, I didn't like the idea of it restoring your stats, but the more I think about it, if as long as you save your stats in like a good place, like maxed out, and don't have to like panic telly before you stored your hit points, for instance. If you have to teleport out in the middle of the fight and you realize you forgot to or save your coordinates, then obviously that's bad. But then that's your own fault, I guess, for not saving your stats. But it's actually not a nerf like I thought it was. It's actually might be a buff in a way because you can just quickly go back out and you don't have to go bank after every kill or every couple kills. You can just come back with full stats after every single kill. Unfortunately, this doesn't work for raids because it only works in non-instance regions. So you have to save yourself outside of like a God Warriors boss, and you also have to save yourself outside of like a raid. You can't like spawn yourself at the chest at Tuminkin Shadows or at Tomes of a Masket. So you can't just constantly spam the loot. You have to like do the whole raid over again. It won't work for any like boss where you have to go through a trial first. You actually have to start from scratch at the beginning of the boss or the beginning of the raid at the beginning of God Wars. Um, so it's still really powerful, and it's going to be extremely hard to choose between these two because I think Last Recall is probably one of the best relics in general to come to leagues over the years. Just being able to teleport back to what you were doing without having to walk all the way back there. Um, so choosing between that and uh, Banker's Note is going to be hard because I think if you're focused on raids, Banker's Note is much better just because you can't last recall into the raid. But if you're focused on something like God Wars or Zulra, which it showed, or any of those like single bosses where you're just going to kill the boss, Last Recall I think might be better. Probably. It's also hard to say because things like skilling, for instance. Sure, bankers know, like let's say you're fishing an inventory of crown ones, and you want to quickly, deposit them. You can either use banker's note and just click that, and then you can continue fishing, or you can use last recall on the spot, quickly teleport to a bank with say your clue teleport relic, and then bank. It takes like 2 seconds, and then last recall back. So you're not saving a whole lot of time either way, skilling or with either one of them. I think where bankers don't really get this power is in those long drawn out raids, where last recall has kind of power everywhere else. So it's a really hard decision to make. I don't know what I'm going to choose yet. I was initially thinking that last recall was kind of nerfed this season, but then after talking through it, I realize that maybe it's buffed. It's got some case uses, I think, of just coming back with full health after every God Wars kill, for instance, or every Araxor kill, because you don't have to spawn. You can't spawn in the Araxor instance for Araxor, but you can spawn right outside, and it's the same thing. Um, Stuff like that, like just some of those single time bosses, which everyone's going to be taking. Everyone's going to have some of those to kill, and just being able to go back outside and only need one potion, basically one sip of your potion to boost your stats. And if you're killing quick enough, which it's league, so you probably will be, you really don't need like any supplies. You can just last recall after every kill. Maybe it hits you a couple times and you have to use like a couple food, but then you just go to the bank quick with a relic and come back and you're right back there and back in the fight right away. Um, Whereas if you take Banker's Note, you're gonna be using more resources, but you're never gonna have to leave. So it's a very interesting choice. I I'm curious what you guys think is going to be the better option. Let me know below.